Now, you don't necessarily have to create a reference computer to use the MDT. For example, you might want to use the MDT simply to build a client upgrade deployment wizard, or you might already have a custom install.wim file that you built with the WADK. However, if you do wish to use the MDT to generate a reference computer, it has built-in capture capability, which is undeniably convenient. Now, the reference computer concept is the same as in WADK deployments. Set up the operating system and any desired customizations, provide any extra drivers needed to support the hardware in your company, and install any applications that you'd like to include in your OS deployments. One nice thing about the MDT is that you are using a GUI rather than command line tools, although the WADK command line tools are certainly available. And as noted earlier, the WADK is a prerequisite for using the MDT. So let's see how we might create a reference computer image using the MDT. So back at the MDT deployment workbench, where we have already loaded in an operating system and configured some audio drivers, the next step in building a reference computer is going to be to create a new task sequence. So we right-click and choose New Task Sequence. We're going to give this an ID. We'll choose REF. And then we have to specify a task sequence name. And we have the option to put in some comments. And now we have to choose the type of task sequence that we wish to create. In our case, it will be a standard client task sequence. But here's the complete list of possibilities that are available. And new in the latest version of the MDT that supports Windows 10, we have some upgrade task sequences here. But we're going to choose standard client task sequence to build our reference computer. Now we select the operating system. There's our Windows 10 install.wim. We can specify a product key later, and we can include some settings about the task sequence if we like. And the local administrator password. And next to execute. And the task sequence has been created. We can click Finish and see it here. And we can examine some properties of the task sequence at this point. I can click the Task Sequence tab and see the detailed steps. Notice we have an imaging node down at the bottom. We can expand that, and we can see that we have the capability of performing a capture. That is a decision that can be made when we actually run the MDT deployment wizard. And you can see that there's a sysprep step to prepare the reference computer by stripping out any SIDs and any machine-specific details that we don't want to include in our image that we'd like to clone. And at the very bottom, create the .wim file. If we take a look at the OS Info tab, you can see that there's a button called Edit Unattend.xml. That will actually build a catalog file and fire up the System Image Manager if we would like to build an answer file for this reference computer build process in similar fashion to the System Image Manager demo that we performed a little earlier. And the next step would be to update the deployment share. So we could right-click the deployment share and choose to update it, and that will then create the customized boot light touch PE image that I can run in order to install the reference computer and then optionally capture it out, for example, to a network location. We will choose here to completely regenerate the boot images. And next. And this process can take quite a while, so we'll compress it for the purpose of this video. Okay, well, now the deployment share update has been completed, and we can click Finish, and we can fire up Windows Explorer and take a peek at it. And we can see that in the boot node, I now have some files I didn't have before, and they're descriptively named Light Touch PE. So there are ISO files, which you could use, for example, if you were planning to install the reference computer image onto a virtual machine, you could attach that virtual machine to the ISO and boot to the virtual DVD in order to initiate the MDT deployment of the reference computer. We also have a .wim format file that we could use, for example, if we wanted to perform an installation over the network or with DISM. And those Light Touch PE boot files will allow us to kick off the install of our reference computer. The MDT Light Touch installer can then be booted to from a DVD or over the network, and the wizard will allow me to perform an immediate capture afterwards of the reference computer. So the end result is a custom install.wim image that I can then deploy to end users.